How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Weather Sponge 5000, and today we're going to forecast the probability each area within a 50-mile radius will experience a landfalling hurricane along the East Coast as well as the Gulf of Mexico coastal states. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So to forecast which areas are the most likely to receive a landfalling hurricane this hurricane season, of course, we need to forecast the exact track or the general trajectory of where tropical cyclones will go this hurricane season. And one of the best ways to do it is looking at the geopotential height anomaly forecast from the CFS model, which is a climatology computer model, and it pretty much forecasts where there will be ridges that develop and where there will be a little bit of a stronger area where there's more troughs that develop, and of course the location of ridges as well as troughs really determine the trajectory of tropical cyclones, as it's very important in determining whether or not each area of the United States will receive a landfalling hurricane. Because if the wind shear, or if there's a trough that's a little bit stronger, then we're more likely to see the storm move out to sea as a result of the strong westerly winds. However, if we see a little bit of stronger ridging, we're more likely to see tropical cyclones move close to the United States. And based on how the 3-month height anomaly looks like, pretty much to show you in the areas where you're seeing orange and the reds, that's where the pressure is a little bit higher. That's where the ridges are located. And in the areas where there isn't any color, or in some cases in the blues, that's where there's a little bit less, the pressure is a little bit lower than usual, which represents lower pressure overall. So if we were to show you guys how the ridging will build during the main part of the hurricane season between August, September, and October, we do see that a lot of the northern Atlantic is experiencing very strong ridging at this point. And this is concerning because if we see strong enough ridging in the northern Atlantic, that would steer storms closer and closer to the United States rather than moving out to sea if there was a weakness in ridging in the middle of the Atlantic. But it seems more evident that we're going to see just strong enough ridging in the northern Atlantic to steer storms further westward, which I think definitely does enhance the chance of tropical cyclones making landfall along the United States. And combined with the fact that this hurricane season will be more active than usual, the probability of a landfalling hurricane throughout the United States, I think, will inevitably be higher this hurricane season. So that's suddenly something to be aware of. And I think in all areas of the United States, you will experience a higher probability of a hurricane making landfall. I will say there are still some areas that do go much higher than the average and other areas along the coast, but overall, and generally speaking, the United States more likely than not will experience a landfalling hurricane this hurricane season as a result of a more active than usual hurricane season and this strong ridging that's expected to build throughout the northern Atlantic headed into the more active months of the hurricane season, which should steer storms further westward, which is definitely something to be aware of. Even if we were to take a look at the 3-month height anomaly between July, August, and September, we still do see a lot of strong ridging build throughout the Atlantic. However, what's interesting is that we do have this small area where ridging is a little weaker now. That would certainly be good news because that could steer more storms out to sea if we do see just enough of a weakness in ridging right in the middle of the Atlantic. But we need to see more confident forecast from the CFS model if that's the case, that we're going to see a strong enough weakness in ridging. Because as of right now, you see that while there is this slight weakness, the height anomaly is still above average for that time of the year in that specific location. So there still could easily be a possibility where the ridging is just strong enough. And I'd say it's more likely than not we're going to see ridging just strong enough throughout the northern Atlantic to force a lot of storms further westward, which would enhance the risk of hurricanes making landfall. So that's something to keep in mind. It is expected to last pretty much all year round, even into the winter months of 2022, which I think definitely does enhance the risk of storms getting steered all the way westward, which is definitely something to keep in mind. But another thing we need to take a look at is sea surf temperatures, and you're probably wondering, how do sea surf temperatures affect the probability of a tropical cyclone making landfall along the United States, as well as how they could manipulate the track of tropical cyclones this hurricane season? Well, I think it's important to take a look at sea surf temperatures, because in the areas where the sea surf temperatures are much warmer than average, that typically means that the air pressure will be lower, which in return in that area will force the ridging to build somewhere else outside of where the water temperatures are a little bit warmer than average. And if we were to take a look at sea surf temperature anomalies that's forecast this hurricane season, we see that pretty much the entirety of the northern Atlantic is experiencing sea surf temperatures much warmer than average. However, there are definitely some areas where how much it is above average is far higher than other areas. So based on that fact, we could maybe forecast where the ridging will build this hurricane season, because if the sea surf temperatures are closer to average in one area, then the more likely ridging will build in that area, because the sea surf temperatures won't be warm enough to create enough lift in the atmosphere and enough movement in the air molecules and buoyancy to allow for the air pressure to be low enough for a ridge not to build. So that's something we need to keep in mind, the sea surf temperatures as well. And if you were to take a look at sea surf temperature forecast for the main parts of the hurricane season, which include August and September, while the most of the Atlantic is experiencing sea surf temperatures much warmer than average, the areas where the sea surf temperatures are expected to be closer to average include the Caribbean Sea, as well as, I'd say, the southern portion of the main development region, where in fact we do see sea surf temperatures just slightly cooler than average just off the West African coast along the main development region. So I'd say there is a possibility that, and you see that the areas where the sea surf temperatures are far from average include much of the northern Atlantic, especially just off the coast of New England, extending further northward, closer to Greenland and Canada. That's where we're seeing sea surf temperatures that are far from average. So there could be a possibility where ridging, I'd say, develops a little bit further south and eastward, which is definitely interesting, and I think it could maybe force tropical cyclones to move a little bit more northward this hurricane season as a result of this weakness in ridging we're going to see due to the warmer than average sea surf temperatures. So that's something interesting. If I were to give a forecast where exactly tropical cyclones will go based on the sea surf temperatures alone, I'd say tropical cyclones are more likely to move a little bit further northward this hurricane season, which puts more of the East Coast at risk. And while in the Gulf of Mexico, sea surf, there could be a little bit more ridging this hurricane season, I think that since the sea surf temperatures along pretty much the eastern Atlantic will be much warmer than average compared to the westward portion of the hurricane season, the sea surf temperatures are much warmer than the eastern portion of the northern Atlantic. I'd say more tropical cyclones are more likely to develop in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, which I think would overall raise the risk even for the southeast, even though I do expect a fair share of tropical cyclones to move northward, and a decent amount of them could be fish storms, but I think the East Coast definitely is more at risk for a landfalling hurricane this hurricane season as a result of a lack of ridging I'm expecting due to the much warmer than average sea surf temperatures, which is definitely something to keep in mind. And I'm also expecting more storms developing in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. And those types of storms, there's a lot of them that typically moved sort of in this direction, where they sort of move northeast as a result of a strong enough trough, and some of them do come uncomfortably close to the East Coast. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, Taking a look at my Bermuda high forecast I made a couple days ago, you see that I'm expecting more of an influx of tropical cyclones to move further northward this hurricane season because, like I said, sea surface temperatures are warmer than average. So I do expect a little bit more troughing and a little bit less ridging along the western Atlantic, which would allow for more tropical cyclones to move northward rather than directly westward. So this is my general track forecast I'm expecting. So the East Coast should be more at risk as a result of this ridge. I'm expecting to build a little bit more eastward than usual. And in terms of my forecast when it comes to the hurricane season overall, I'm expecting much more hurricanes than average. And thanks to the fact that a La Nina is now more probable, I'm expecting more tropical cyclones than my last forecast I made regarding the probability of landfalls within the around the United States. So as a result, I'm expecting I'm raising up the chances of landfall throughout the United States East Coast as well as the Gulf Coast, thanks to the new information we've received regarding the ENSO forecast, which does now favor a La Nina, which would enhance the risk of a more active than usual hurricane season. Now, we also need to take a look at historical data of how often or how frequent we see tropical cyclones make landfall in each specific area within a 50-mile radius of the United States. And you see the areas that most likely receive hurricane landfalls most frequently include North Carolina, the southern portion of Florida, as well as the southeastern portion of Louisiana, close to New Orleans, where in these areas you typically receive a landfalling hurricane within every 5 to 7 years, and this includes southern Florida as well. So in those areas, that's where you're the most likely to receive a landfalling hurricane. And even a lot of other areas in the Gulf of Mexico do receive at least one landfalling hurricane at every 10 years. So it's still pretty frequent that happens anywhere north of Virginia Beach. That's where the chance does subside. Of course, the wind shear does increase, the westerly winds do increase, so that forces a lot of tropical cyclones to move eastward before it could ever impact the Northeast, as well as the fact that sea surface temperatures are cooler than average, and like I said, the wind shear is stronger, so a lot of tropical cyclones tend to weaken as they move closer and closer to the Northeast. But there's still a pretty frequent chance along Long Island, New Jersey, Maryland, and even Delaware where you could receive a landfalling hurricane within your area, where it happens, I'd say, once every 15 to 20 years. But anywhere north, I'd say, of Boston, the chance is extremely rare. Almost once or twice in a lifetime you receive a landfalling hurricane. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when making this probability forecast regarding which areas will most likely receive a landfalling hurricane. Now, taking a look at my official landfall forecast probability for the United States. So anywhere that's north of Cape Cod or Boston, the chance of you receiving a landfalling hurricane is less than 5% because typically sea surface temperatures are far too cold than average for a hurricane to last that long. And of course, it's very rare for a hurricane to move sort of in this direction where it's still moving eastward this far up north without being deterred by the strong westerly winds closer to the Canadian border. So as a result, less than 5% chance of a landfalling hurricane I'm expecting this hurricane season. And then I'm expecting a 10% chance of a landfalling hurricane within a 50-mile radius in any of these areas along the East Coast. This includes Long Island, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, and pretty much bordering between the Delmar Peninsula and Virginia Beach, where I'm expecting a 10% chance of a hurricane making landfall within 50 miles of your from your location within the coast. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a little bit higher than the usual, which the usual is more in line with 5 to 7% chance. It's because I'm expecting more tropical cyclones to move further northward, so I'm raising the probability a little bit along the mid-Atlantic coast, and then moving southward, I'm expecting a pretty high 25% chance along the Outer Banks as a result of a higher probability of tropical cyclones moving northward, which would put more of the Outer Banks at risk for a landfalling hurricane. 15% just south of it, as again, it's a little bit more rare that a tropical cyclone moves in this direction, as typically South Carolina and Georgia don't really pop out into the Atlantic like that, so it doesn't receive as many landfalling tropical cyclones. And then I'm expecting 25% chance right around Miami, and pretty much between West Palm Beach and as far south as Homestead, Florida, where I'm expecting a 25% chance of landfalling hurricane. 15% along the Gulf Coast, more specifically the coast of the Florida Panhandle, Alabama, and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. 20% just south of New Orleans, and then 15 and 10% for Texas. And overall, this is higher than what you tip. This probability is higher for every location along the coast than what is typical. So that's something to keep in mind. So make sure to prepare for this hurricane season, as a hurricane making landfall is definitely more likely this hurricane season. And in the areas where it's far above average, I'd say in North Carolina, that's where the probability is definitely at its highest, where I'd say there could be as high as a 30% chance you receive a landfalling hurricane. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a great day.